Hey guys! So, we're doing a very different type of video today. I just felt like doing something different, and I felt like chatting with you guys, and the best type of chatting videos on YouTube are, how do you say it? Mukbangs? Mukbang? Food eating videos. Do you know what I'm talking about? Where people just sit down and they literally just eat and talk to the camera. Those are kind of really cathartic videos to just watch, so I kind of wanted to try being on the other side of the camera and filming them, because I've just had some thoughts recently just about books, the YA world, the BookTube community, things that I've been reading, trends, etc. So I'm coming to you today with the most basic lunch ever. I literally have Chipotle and an iced pumpkin spice latte. Come at me, bro. I'm gonna eat my lunch and I'm gonna make all of you real hungry, for those of you who like Chipotle, because every time I see somebody post a picture or a mukbang with Chipotle, I'm like, oh man, I really need Chipotle. Look at it. Oh, it's so beautiful. Food. I love it. So, the very first thing that I wanted to talk to you guys about is something that I'm genuinely really curious about, and I want to know what you guys think as well. So, let me chew first. Maybe this is why a lot of people don't do mukbangs, because you talk with your mouth full. But I want to know where you guys think the YA world is going. So I have been in the YA book world for many a year, well over a decade at this point. I've been reading books in the YA genre. It's not even a genre, it's just an age range. I've been reading books that are considered YA since before the term young adult really even existed. It used to just be like teen, and it was like a bay of bookshelves in Barnes & Noble, and that was it. So I have seen a lot of trends come and go throughout this world. Well, I think the YA world started pre-Twilight, when we had like a weird experimental niche of authors who were writing an age group of characters who were just in high school. Like, the teen world used to be a lot younger. It was a lot more like 15, 16 versus like 17, 18. So it was a lot like more juvenile, I think, and it was a lot more high school based or just paranormal based. So the genre kind of started in that area. And paranormal, what we know now as paranormal romance, started kind of creeping in. We kind of dealt with everything, not just vampires. We were dealing with like werewolves and ghosts and angels and things like that. Then Twilight hit, and it was vampires everywhere. And I was reading vampires pre-Twilight, and they were good. Then Twilight happened, and we had a good batch for a couple months, and then it just got oversaturated. It seemed like everybody and their mom was coming out with vampire or werewolf love stories. I remember I was actually working at Barnes & Noble when the term paranormal romance became its own section. Like, I remember when we got in the shelf labels that said paranormal romance. So we had the teen section, and right next to that we had the paranormal romance section. Why? I don't know. So we had paranormal romance, and as that started dying off, we started to see dystopian, like old school Divergent days dystopian, and like the Hunger Games, the Maze Runner, like early dystopian things. And that, I think, was such a pivotal moment for the YA world, and I loved it because it opened up so many thought-provoking things to younger readers that were saved for like adult sci-fi concepts. It got everybody thinking about like things that they disagreed with in society. Even if it was like on an extreme in the book, it got teens thinking about how society runs and operates, and things that they're okay with, things they're not okay with. It just kind of like opened up this door for like open-mindedness in teens, and it was so cool. I loved that time. Then, as usual, that got oversaturated. We saw tons and tons of dystopian, and I'm actually in a weird phase right now that it's probably 10 years since that happened, that I'm starting to finally appreciate good dystopian stories again. Like, I think Scythe by Neil Shusterman that came out is like kind of opening the door back up to more thought-provoking societal type stories. I love that. So we went through kind of a weird dry spell again. I feel like we hit really big trends, and then they start to die off, and we have like a couple months to a year of like a transition period where weird stories get attempted, and they either get received well or they don't. And then we hit the retelling and fantasy stage, and we are still in the midst of that, but I definitely see us coming down from that slope. And don't get me wrong, I still actually enjoy a lot of retellings and a lot of fantasy. There's definitely good fantasy coming out. So that being said, I'm curious to see where we go next. Right now, it seems like this summer alone, mermaids and pirates are very trendy, but I think that's a very niche thing, and I think we've already almost exhausted it because we had so many releases in that vein very recently. And while they've been accepted really well, I don't think they're like mind-blowing to anybody. It's been a long time since we've had a Twilight, or we've had a Divergent, or we've had a Throne of Glass. Kind of on the cusp of like a new huge phenomenon type story to come out. And I'm kind of excited because contemporaries are starting to be that. Like with the Netflix movie To All the Boys I've Loved Before, all of a sudden people who never read contemporary are starting to read contemporary. So that's intriguing to me to see where that goes, because contemporary is no longer all fluff. Like it's not all set in high school around a prom, and it's not all just fluffy romance. We're starting to get a lot of dark contemporary, a lot of thriller contemporary, and I'm loving it. I'm really excited to see where that goes. But is that going to be the next Twilight? I don't think so. I'm also starting to see that we're getting a lot of not historical fiction, well I guess it could be considered that, but a lot of fantasy type stories that are based on the Vikings. Like Vikings are huge, and I think that's going to be a next thing that's coming, because Sky in the Deep did really well, and I know that, what's her name? Trisha Levenseller, who wrote The Daughter of the Pirate King, she's coming out with Warriors of the Wild. I want to say that's what it's called. She's coming out with a Viking-inspired story. So I'm thinking it's going to focus on diverse mythology, because we're getting a lot of like African-inspired stories, Asian-inspired stories, Celtic mythology, Norse mythology, things like that. I think that's the direction we're going, which is going to be so intriguing because there's so many untouched stories. Like, whether it's a retelling of like an Irish fairy tale or like a Nigerian folklore, you know what I mean? So I think that that's going to be exciting. I think retellings are going to be here to stay, but it's going to branch out from like the Disney princess genre. That was extremely long-winded. My question to you guys is, where do you think YA is going? Because we have kind of an open door situation here. We have a lot of possibilities, and it's interesting to see what is trending and what isn't. The other thing that I see coming up is something that makes me really nervous, and that is the fact, okay, it started in like the movie and TV world where they're bringing back classic 90s shows, or just classic shows in general, and they're remaking them. Some of them are really good, some are god-awful, and I'm starting to see that happening in the book world, and I'm terrified of it, because I don't know yet if they're going to be good or received well, but I'm scared that that's going to be the next trend, because you could very easily ruin things that are very nostalgic to people by overdoing it. But at the same time, I'm ridiculously excited. Okay, Slayer by Kirsten White that's coming out, ridiculously excited, mainly because she's a well-established author and I know her writing, and her writing is good. So I'm excited for that, but I'm also still scared because, like, don't ruin Buffy, because I think that's the start to a new series. I don't think it's actually going to be a standalone. I think it's going to start a series, and I'm terrified that it's not going to... The big part of Buffy to me is like the 90s nostalgic. Like they are wearing platform shoes, belly shirts, chokers, the whole 9 yards. And I feel like that's part of the appeal to me, is that it's a very nostalgic looking show. But they also just announced recently that there's a new, I think it's just a duology. I think it's only a 2-book deal at this point, but I did see that there's going to be a new YA adaptation to Avatar: The Last Airbender. They're writing the origin story and the continuation of Avatar Kyoshi, which I'm so excited about, but again, terrified, because I just want that show to continue. Like, I just want the next thing after The Legend of Korra. I just want more of the show. Not necessarily a book, but again, ridiculously excited about that. I do see that coming, and I'm excited, but it's a very anxious excitement. Leave it in the comments what you guys think the new trend is gonna be. So that's on books, and then I'm curious what you guys think will happen with BookTube, because BookTube has gone through similar trends as well. But I've been watching BookTube since early Catty-tastic days. Like, Cat was the first booktuber that I really found, which obviously branched me into like Reagan and Jessie and Christine and blah blah blah. But when BookTube started, it was book reviews, it was discussions, it was hauls, and that was kind of it. There wasn't any sort of like more creativity than that, and it has obviously blossomed into this awesome community, but it's also blossomed into a lot of drama. And I like to think that the BookTube community, or just the book community in general, is one of the most welcoming communities on the internet, but because it's starting to get more and more hype and more followers, that brings more drama. And I feel like a lot of the drama that happens in the book community is like self-inflicted. Like people are just picking things because they like drama. You know what I'm talking about? And I tend to stay away from that. But I like that there are new creators that are out here who are putting so much effort into these videos, and there's starting to be a lot of content that has never been seen. So, okay, we started with early book reviews, book hauls. That was basically it. Then I think Christine is kind of the one to thank for this, unfortunately, but we got into like sketch BookTube where there was a lot of like comedy where they kind of like interviewed people, or they just made fun of like tropes or covers. And then all of those booktubers kind of went off into their own genre. Like they have their own author interviews. They do big BookCon type videos and vlogs. And the smaller BookTube community is like where it's at right now. There's so many new creators. I'm excited to see where it goes. It's definitely oversaturated and there's a lot of drama, but I feel like out of that, we can get some really good content because reading vlogs are huge right now. And I personally love them because it's opening up the lives of these readers to people. Like you see more than just their bookshelves in their background of their video. I love seeing what they do day to day and how they read, the books that they choose to read and their process with that. So those are getting really popular. Same with like Q&A or just chit chat, like discussion type videos where they're sitting down and they're giving you a lot more to their life. Like Books and Lala, her channel is great because she includes like her husband in her videos, her son in her videos, and she includes like all different aspects, and it's not just, I'm gonna sit in front of a camera and tell you why I like this book. She does a lot of different types, and I'm so excited that it's branching into more things. So again, I want to open the question up to you guys. Where do you think it's going? Because I love the direction that vlogs are going. I think that BookTube is about to expand more into a vlogging community, not necessarily daily vlogging, but just a lot more that goes into the process of BookTube, not just the finished product. Because a lot of people are making videos about how they make videos or about how they pick their TBRs and things like that. So I like seeing that, and I like seeing more of it, and I like seeing more discussion videos where people are actually engaged in the community and bringing up the tough topics that are being discussed on Twitter. It's being finally brought to YouTube, or things that are on Instagram. It's kind of, it's nice, okay? Man, I didn't realize how much of a one-sided conversation this was gonna be. Normally when you're having lunch with somebody, you say something, and then the other person talks so that you can eat. I'm the only one talking. I want to eat more, so I had to stop and eat a little bit. So long story short, I'm just excited to see that BookTube is kind of opening up to more behind the scenes type of things. There's starting to be a lot of videos about how people film, the books they choose, how they go about getting ARCs, how they go about getting sponsorships, which is something that was like taboo a couple years ago, and that's what people want to know though. I personally still think it's going to be a lot more transparency with the booktubers themselves, their process, and the BookTube life, with publishers working with them and just an inside look into the publishing world, and with authors and with vendors. I've seen over like the past year or two that there's a lot of debut authors where they're not unapproachable. They want to be included in the BookTube world. There's authors who are on BookTube as well. Like Lindsay Cumming has a BookTube channel, obviously Sasha does. But I've talked with a lot of authors who were authors first and then BookTube second. I feel like it's just becoming a more of like an informative platform to really learn what like getting a book published is like, but also what the marketing part is like, because BookTube, when it comes down to it, is a marketing platform. It's an advertising platform for publishers, for authors, and for vendors, whether that be for book boxes or book products or anything like that. Bookstagram itself is really saturated with like Etsy shop owners and individual artists who are putting work forward and they get reps. There's a lot of reps on Bookstagram. And BookTube is kind of starting to get that way. I think that a lot of shop owners or just creators in general are starting to reach out to not only Bookstagrammers but also BookTubers because it's a much larger platform. So I think, like I said, the transparency between the consumers and the actual market that's putting product forward is starting to kind of mesh because of YouTube. It's a very easily outspoken platform that you can give very honest thoughts about a product without it being a commercial. There's starting to be a lot more openness and discussion about the process and about advertising and marketing and how the market works, which I think is really cool because I feel like these are things that you would only know if you worked in the industry or if you went to school for it. So I guess, one, if you guys want to know anything about my BookTube experience, leave it down in the comments. I plan on making like a kind of a BookTube 101, not to steal the idea from Emma, but just like my perspective of how I started my channel and how it's going for me. So if you have any questions for me personally, leave it down in the comments, or just about the community in general. So that being said, those are my thoughts on 2 kind of similar topics. So leave your comments and your thoughts down in the description if you guys have thoughts about any of this stuff, if you guys liked this video. I kind of enjoyed this experience. I got to sit here and eat Chipotle and talk to a camera. That's pretty great, and I hope you guys enjoyed this. I'll see you guys in my next video.